So continue my free agency predictions series. This is going to be the last video, the last of the 3 videos, where I will be covering the top 10 centers that are free agents and my predictions on where they will end up. First up is DeMarcus Cousins. I have a 50% chance he stays with the Pelicans, 30% chance he goes to the Lakers, and a 20% chance he goes to the Mavericks. So the reason I have the Pelicans being 50% is they have bird rights. Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins like playing with each other, and while they are statistically better without DeMarcus Cousins, I still do think he's making their team better. I wouldn't sign him to a long-term deal though, probably just a 2-year deal since he's coming off the AC or the Achilles injury. Now I have the Lakers, as you know, he's a big name free agent. The Lakers are linked to every big name guy, and if he joins, then LeBron might join as well. Who knows? I also have the Mavs because they are also linked to all of the big name centers like him, DeAndre Jordan, and Julius Randle. Next up is Nikola Jokic, and I have a 100% chance he stays with the Nuggets. Nikola Jokic right now is signing a 5-year max contract with the Nuggets, and by the time this video is out, he might have the deal finalized. So there's absolutely no chance he goes anywhere else. Next up is Clint Capella. I have a 90% chance he stays with the Rockets, 5% chance he goes to the Suns, and a 5% chance he goes to another team. So I see no scenario really in which Clint Capella doesn't re-sign with the Rockets. They have his bird rights, he's a restricted free agent, and the Rockets owner is more than willing to pay for a championship team, and Clint is obviously a big part of their championship team. He has been linked to Phoenix, however, and if Houston's not comfortable with signing him to a max contract, then Phoenix or another team like the Kings or the Hawks could definitely sign him. Still, though, I don't see that happening, and I see him returning to Houston. Next up is DeAndre Jordan. I have a 65% chance he goes to the Mavs, 10% chance he stays with the Clippers, and a 25% chance he goes to another team. Now, I do expect the Mavs to sign him. The only reason they wouldn't is because they can't agree on the length for their contract or the amount of money. That's the reason I think he might go back to LA, is because they have his bird rights. They can offer him the max. I just don't know if the Mavericks are comfortable offering him like a 4-year max deal. And, you know, other teams like the Lakers or the Suns, they have the money to do so, and they could throw him a max contract. Next up is Yusuf Nurkic. I have a 90% chance he stays with the Blazers, 5% chance he goes to the Suns, and a 5% chance he goes to another team. Now, I think the Blazers want to keep him. They have his bird rights, and he's a restricted free agent. The reason I said the Suns is because they are linked to Capella, of course, and Nurkic is a pretty similar player. Although, I really don't see the Suns paying for him. I think the Blazers are going to be the only team to offer him a near max contract, which I think they will, and I think he accepts that, and he stays with the Blazers. Now on to Brook Lopez. I have a 30% chance he goes back to the Nets, 25% chance he goes to the Bucks, 15% chance he stays with the Lakers, and a 30% chance he goes to another team. Now, Brook Lopez, kind of like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, is going to be a very, very interesting free agent to keep an eye on this summer. I don't think he's going to go back to the Lakers, although if they strike out on everyone, they could re-sign him on a pretty large 1-year contract. I could see him go back to the Nets, but still, that's only 30%, and, you know, it's kind of unlikely. I could see him going to the Bucks. They do need scoring, and the center is a position of need for them. Still, though, it's impossible to say where he's going to end up, and like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, he could legitimately go anywhere, and no one would be surprised. Next up is Nerlens Noel. I have a 30% chance he goes to the Hawks, 25% chance he goes to the Kings, and a 45% chance he goes to another team. Like Brook Lopez and KCP, Noel is an extremely interesting free agent. His relations with Dallas have been really, really bad over the last 2 years, and I think there's no chance he resigns. Still, though, there are a lot of teams that could use him. He's a very good defender, and I think he's only 24 or 25 years old, which is why I think a young team like the Hawks or Kings could sign him. Still, though, it's unclear how much money he'll get, and he could get anywhere from the mid-level exception to around 12 or 13 million a year, which is why I think a team like the Wizards, who needs a center, if they clear cap and can get the full 8 million mid-level exception, I think they could sign him. Still, though, it's extremely unclear and just genuinely unknown where he's going to go. Next up is Aaron Baines. I have a 35% chance he stays with the Celtics, 30% chance he goes back to the Spurs, and a 35% chance he goes to another team. Now that the Celtics drafted Robert Williams and Daniel Tice is returning from injury, Aaron Baines doesn't really have he isn't going to have the same role as he did last year, which is why I don't think he's resigning. He did win a championship in San Antonio, and they could use a backup center now that Joffrey Laverne is headed overseas, so I could see a reunion there. But again, it's kind of unclear where he's going to go. The Wizards could be an interesting destination. I think they're linked to a lot of the mid-level or mid-tier centers because they are desperate for a center. Next up is Kyle O'Quinn. I have a 60% chance he goes to the Wizards, 20% chance he goes to the Nets, and a 20% chance he goes to another team. The reason I have him going to the Wizards is because I think the Wizards could easily clear enough cap to get the full mid-level exception, and then I think they could give Kyle O'Quinn the full $8.3 million mid-level exception, which he would be a fool not to accept. They need a center. They could offer him a much bigger role than a few other teams. The reason I have the Nets is because they need a center very badly, as Jared Allen's really their only center right now. And I know they roll with a lot of smaller lineups, but I think another backup center like Kyle O'Quinn is going to be good for them. Of course, they also have the cap space to make the deal work. Next up is Greg Monroe. I have a 30% chance he goes to the Knicks, 25% chance he goes to the Pelicans, and a 45% chance he goes to another team. Now, of course, the Knicks just lost Kyle O'Quinn, and he's probably not going to re-sign. I think he wants more money, and I think he wants a bigger role and wants to be out of New York. I could see them signing Kyle O'Quinn as a filler for the next year or so. I could see the Pelicans doing so because they do need bench scoring, and Kyle O'Quinn is a great scorer off the bench as a big man. The only problem is they don't really have the cap. They could make the cap, but they also wouldn't be able to offer him that big of a role. Still, though, he's another guy it's kind of unknown where he will end up. Next up is Montrezl Harrell. I have a 80% chance he returns to the Clippers and a 20% chance he goes to the Knicks. Now, he has bird rights with the Clippers, and he is a restricted free agent, so I don't see a scenario in which he doesn't re-sign with them. The question is, how much money is he going to make, and that is a very good question. It could be anywhere from 3 to 8 million realistically. Now, I think the Knicks would be an interesting team. I think it'd be a fun fit next to Kristaps. He's a very mobile and athletic big man, and he can knock down the mid-range. He's actually pretty similar to Kenneth Faried, but I think he has more of a jumper. Still, though, I do expect him to return to the Clippers. So those are my predictions for the top 10 centers in free agency. Leave a like if you've enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and comment down below where you think they will end up.